Barry, in trying to understand free will, great philosophical debates, how do we integrate the concept of agency in free will?
Well, we think of ourselves as being an agent who can choose and decide freely. That is, that at any moment, it's up to me to decide to carry out an action. And very often the definition of free will is, I could have done otherwise. It was in my power to choose to do or not to do. But once I'm starting to move, once I'm committed to carrying out the act, there may be less freedom than I think there is. In other words, having committed to it, I'm already now acting as an agent. Now, I think free will is riddled with surrounding confusions, because often people say, I could have done otherwise means it was completely open for me to do anything at that moment. Now, that's not true. There were preceding causes. There were things that had gone on in my brain and in my body and in my previous history leading to that moment. I don't think free will would make any sense if we thought it was uncaused. It came from nowhere. It just intervened into the causal order, brought something about, and there were no precedents. There were no causal antecedents. So obviously, to have a notion of freedom that isn't randomness and complete spontaneity, it has to be caused. So something.
Well, the idea of an agent is that I'm causing it, that I'm making
that I'm doing it. Now the question is, who is the I?
Right.
Now, again, there's a common belief. It's actually shared by, I think, the general public and a lot of the neuroscientists in this debate who worry that maybe neuroscience shows us we don't have free will. They tend to think the I that is choosing and causing has to be the conscious I. So in other words, if my conscious decisions are not the things that propel my actions, then I wouldn't have free will. But of course, those moments of conscious decision, I think, are preceded by many unconscious goings on that were necessary to get to the point of deliberately doing something. And of course, a lot of the things I'm doing, and surely neuroscience is teaching us that, many of the things I'm doing are much less about my conscious monitoring and control than I thought. And a good thing too. Very often I have to act fast and I have to make sudden movements or gestures, or I have to decide. And I'm very glad it's not up to me consciously to choose. I mean, I look at a restaurant menu, I have to make a decision. Oh, I'm between one or two things, and I plump. And it's a good way of actually plumping that I, as it were, send it off to something else that's not within my conscious control. Or I could be in there all day thinking, which is better?
Yeah. What can we learn from neuroscience about the concept of agency, particularly in cases of brain injury? Can the concept of agency be manipulated?
Well, the concept of agency can go missing as when people think that things they are actually doing are not under their voluntary control. I mean, there are simple cases of this where somebody may actually perform, as a result of brain damage, perform routine activities whenever they see a trigger or a stimulus. So you're wearing a pair of glasses. Now, if there are glasses on the table, some of these patients might put the glasses on as soon as they see them. But if you put another pair of glasses on, they put the second pair on. If you put a third pair down, they put the third pair on. In other words, there's a sort of automatic reaction. This is the appropriate movement when I see an object of that sort. Now, that, I think, is some sort of routinized behavior that has become stuck and triggered too automatically. They're unable to inhibit an instinctual response to reach for something. More difficult cases of, say, anarchic hand, are where I'm making movements with my arm, but thinking it's not me who is doing it. The arm seems to reach out by itself to grab something.
So what do these cases say about our sense of agency?
I think our sense of agency is very strong, but our sense of agency overflows some of the things that we're actually in control of. We know that we aggrandize our own control by thinking we're actually controlling the very fine-grained movements that we're making, when in fact it's automatic and it's rather routine. At the same time, there are cases where we seem to not be in control of things that we really should be. such as decision making. I mean, when I am faced with really serious decisions in my life, I weigh them in my mind, I think, and I believe it's me who's deciding. It would be very odd if we lost that sense of agency. I mean, I can imagine brain damaged patients losing a sense of agency for their reachings, their graspings, their movement of limbs. But imagine losing a sense that you were deciding and that you were actually choosing things. I think to lose that is actually now to have a fragmentation of self.
And has that occurred?
Not that I know of, or not that it makes any intelligible sense to talk about that. But of course, you might think of people with addiction, think of alcoholism, think of cases where the urge to take a drink, the urge to have a cigarette, the urge to eat chocolate and so on is abnormally powerful and abnormally high. And I think there are interesting cases there where people say, well, with addictions, it's just that the person is weak-willed. You know, if they thought and tried hard enough, they could resist this. No, I think it's that the desire for the wanted object is so strong because the dopamine system is actually short-circuiting the usual pathways of anticipation and reward and giving you a massive hit to make that drink, that chocolate, and things associated with it so powerful that even if you have a normal weakness of will, you're not particularly weak-willed, these things are just overwhelmingly powerful. So I think even though we have a sense of agency, we're often not aware of what started the whole process off. Now, of course, that interacts with a very famous discussion by Benjamin Libet in neuroscience, where Libet's going to say, you have the reverse of the order you think you have. It's not your conscious decision, then your motor preparation, and then the action. It's rather the motor preparation, then the conscious decision, then the action. Now, usually people will say, oh, well, it doesn't have to be my conscious decision. Maybe there was an unconscious decision that preceded and it only surfaced in consciousness after I've started to move, started to act. But I think Libet should have asked his subjects a rather different question. He should have said, when were you conscious that you were going to perform that action? And the answer is probably right after he told them, will you agree to lift your finger at any particular moment of your choosing? And they said yes. So in fact, they're thinking, I'm going to lift my finger. And they're ready, I'm going to lift my finger. When? Now, no, not yet. Oh, now. Yeah. Now, of course, they've already consciously committed to doing that by participating in the experiment. So does the conscious intention to do this precede the motor movement? Sure it does.
So what's the implications between free will and agency? How close are they interrelated?
I think they are close. I think there are things we do freely where we are not so aware of being the agent of doing them. And equally, there are things that we don't do freely where we think we're the agent. So there can be a mismatch in our perception. And our agency, our sense of agency is bound up with a sense of self. And that means that when it's marching in step with free will, we're getting things right, we're free agents. When it's out of step, then I think things are going very badly wrong, and we are still committed to a sense of self, not as free as we thought we were.